Well, welcome to a Forty20 Live special, previewing the NRL Grand Final. John Davidson's here. We previewed the semis last week. I think you probably picked the two teams that you thought would get to the final are the ones that we've ended up with. Just a couple of questions to start with. We said that when the playoff series started that the 8 teams were covered by 2 points, and yet here we are with 1 and 2 in the Grand Final. Is that how it's supposed to work, do you think?
Not always, but I think it's probably a fair reflection on the season and a fair reflection on how Melbourne have been for the last few years, and the Roosters, picking up minor premierships year after year. And Melbourne won the Grand Final last year. They were in the Grand Final before that. They've got a dynasty that goes back over a decade of success, and they've just continued that on this year.
But the amazing thing is, and we'll get into talking about likely team selections, that if Melbourne do win, they will be the first team in the whole Super League era that will have retained the trophy. This is their driving force. So although we say similar teams get to Grand Finals, although we go through a very close playoff series and we end up with the same teams, a different one seems to win the competition every year.
Yeah, it's been a great result for 25 years. I think the Broncos 92-93 were the last team, and they had what's commonly been probably recorded as a plastic or elastic salary cap. A salary sombrero, if you will. It is ridiculously hard to do, and Melbourne have been the closest. They've been amazing at how they've been able to regenerate. They've had great players come and go. Obviously, that core of Slater and Smith and Cronk until this year have been there, and Craig Bellamy, but they've been able to regenerate and discover new players. So it would be some achievement, and obviously in Billy Slater's last game as well.
The build-up to Grand Final, it's always a huge week. Sydney is awash with stories and copy and interviews, and the centrepiece of that is the Dally M's. A great ceremony. We saw the highlights over here. Right man awarded with the main medal, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Warriors had a great season by their standards. They've been underachievers for years, and Tuivasa-Sheck is a fantastic player. Really disappointing that he'll miss the England Test series with injury, but I think a willing recipient, and obviously Callum Ponga also featured very highly in the awards, and he's really emerged as just another fantastic talent. Obviously eligible for New Zealand and Australia with a dual background, but he's already played for Queensland. He will play for the Kangaroos, so unlucky for New Zealand there.
So the stage is now set for the big dance, as it's called over there. Big crowd expected, irrespective of who the two teams are, which is fantastic. And the whole of the week has been built around a player from each side, effectively. Should Billy Slater play, and will Cooper Cronk play? So take the big contentious issue first. 2-hour judiciary. Billy and his legal crew flew over to Sydney from Melbourne. The evidence was examined, decided that even if it was a shoulder charge in the broadest sense, it wasn't enough to ban him. Sentiment says great that his last game is going to be in the Grand Final, but should he be out there?
No, he shouldn't be out there. I don't think there's anyone. I think Boyd Corner put it well this week. What constitutes a shoulder charge now? If that isn't a shoulder charge, I mean, you're not going to see a more blatant shoulder charge. No one wants to see him miss his last game, whether it's a Grand Final or not. But I think we do have to look at it and go, scratch your heads a little bit, because I think...
I'm not sure. I disagree with you on that, in the fact that it wasn't aimed at his head. I think there was no injury to... You shouldn't judge it on injury. We've said that all throughout the judiciary. Shouldn't be based on whether the offence you've committed is resulted in injury to the person you perpetrated on. But it just seemed to be a collision between shoulders rather than a shoulder charge. Is there a difference, do you think? Or am I being overly sentimental because I want to see Billy play in the Grand Final?
I think there is a difference, but I think you either have the shoulder charge or you don't have it. I mean, you can penalise shoulder charges that go wrong and that hit shoulder to head and whatever, but the shoulder charge has been banned. We've made that jump, if you will. And I'm someone who's been following the game since the early 80s. I love the shoulder charge, but we do have to sort of move on from it. And I think if he'd been sin binned or appropriately punished during the game, then you could just move on, play on for the next game. But the referee kind of bottled that decision in my eyes, and Slater then went on to destroy Cronulla. So they had a fair, which Shane Flanagan didn't really criticise. So all credit to him. But it is a really tough one. I think sentiments ruled the day, and we did see. I think it was the brother of James Ackerman, a player who died, from a shoulder charge that went wrong in the Queensland Cup a few years ago, and these are the sort of things that we have to remember. I mean, obviously there was no injury to Fecky, but this is why we're getting rid of the shoulder charge, and yeah, it's made for great fodder for the media.
But
anyway.
Billy plays.
Billy plays, yeah.
Who might not be playing is probably the biggest conjecture. We may not know until an hour before kick-off, and obviously was a vital part of Melbourne's success. Will be an amazing story, having now taken the Roosters to a grand final. Do you think Cooper Cronk will play?
I think he probably will play. He seems to be a quick healer. I think it was a couple of years ago with an Origin, he rolled an ankle, and he was playing 6 days later and probably won the game with a drop goal. He'll do everything to be on that field, and I think we even saw in the semi-final with an arm just hanging on. He still did okay, so I think he will play. And it just seems to be the grand final seems to throw up these stories. I mean, I can remember in '97 Andrew Johns with a punctured lung going into the grand final against Manly, and he played and came up with a winning play in the last 6 seconds. Obviously, Sam Burgess first hit in 2014. John Sattler broken jaw leads his team to victory. So. Cronk plays and the Roosters and helps the Roosters win the game. It's kind of Hollywood stuff, isn't it?
So we look at the two semi-finals briefly before the lineups that we think are going to play and who are going to be the key guys, and even allowing for Slater being on the field when perhaps he should have had 10 minutes off it. Melbourne were astonishing in that first half against Cronulla, blew them away, played at that level of intensity that we've come to expect. Roosters South's game, more physical, less points. Who's in the best position after their respective semi-finals going into the big game?
Well, you'd think probably the extra day helps Melbourne, but I mean, essentially the grand final is on home turf for the Roosters. It's in Sydney. It's not in the eastern suburbs, but it's in Sydney, so they're very evenly matched. I mean, the recruitment that the Roosters have done last season with bringing James Tedesco and Cooper Cronk has really sort of kicked them further up and made them from challengers to real contenders. And I think they're gelling beautifully well. The emergence of Lachlan Mitchell, Luke Keary is a quality player, and he's really sort of emerged this season as he has the year before. So he can take that weight off Cooper Cronk. Cooper Cronk doesn't have to do everything. And then you look at some of the younger guys like Victor Radley, who's really a bit of a cult hero now in Bondi. So the Roosters are really well placed, as are Melbourne.
So we look at guys maybe who didn't play in the semi-final that are going to come back and perhaps make a difference. The biggest one will be Latrell Mitchell, who was suspended for the Roosters for the semi. To some extent, is good enough to play in any position in the back line. If Cronk was playing and struggling, you wouldn't even think twice about throwing him into the halves. Probably more than you would Mitchell Orbison, who's been named there. Is he, do you think, going to have the determining influence on this game?
I think he really could. You saw that in Origin this year. He absolutely destroyed Will Chambers, who's one of the best defensive centres in the world. And Latrell Mitchell, he's always been the last couple of years. He's still very young. But when he came into grade, he was the next Greg Inglis, very similar in build and style, Aboriginal background from country New South Wales. But this year he used to have a few errors in him. This year he's just destroying teams. So he could do anything. It could be a long night for Will Chambers, who enjoys getting in, sledging him, and I think he did that in Origin and had absolutely no effect. So
I think as well, we'll talk about the packs in a minute, because I think that is probably where the game will be. We won and lost, but two outstanding wingers, one on each team this season. Obviously Blake Ferguson playing his last game before he moves on to Parramatta. Certain Ryan Hall earmarked for the number 5 shirt if he gets over his knee injury. And obviously Josh Adokar, the Fox, who's one of the most entertaining players to watch. Give them the ball and they will score. Yeah,
they've both had fantastic seasons. I think probably Adokar is the fastest player in the NRL, and Vunivalu is probably not that far behind him. And we'll probably see Adokar in the Australian jersey this year, which he's taken over from Ferguson, taking his New South Wales jersey as well. So maybe there's a bit of revenge there on Ferguson's eyes as well. But he's had a great year, Blake Ferguson's. He's always been probably a little bit off the field. He's had some issues, but he seems to be quite settled now with in family life as well, and that's helped his football.
And with those kind of players on the fringes who are just, you're throwing Daniel Tupu, arguably the best catcher of a high ball in the NRL, because you've got four wingers who are so productive, both of these teams will want to get the ball wide. I'm not expecting a game that's just going to be played down the middle.
No, I think it'll be expensive. It'll be fast. There's battles all across the field, from the hookers with Friend and Smith, and the halfbacks. They've also all got forwards who can offload and create themselves. So I think we're in for a fantastic grand final.
looking at the respective packs, I think there's a player on each bench that could turn a game. You've got Dylan Napper, obviously, huge, now settled in the Queensland team and a big game player. Presumably he's on the bench partly because on the other side you've got Nelson Asafa-Solomona, who could be the best forward in world rugby and has already shown in big games, particularly in the World Club Challenge, just came on and changed the game. Are those two players, do you think, coming off the bench maybe on the 20-minute mark, going to have a big say in this? I
think Asafa-Solomona is kind of like the new Tamalolo in many ways. He's kind of taking that mantle, just so destructive. And Napa, kind of, he can be, there's the shades of Gordon Tallis of old, but also he's had some rash moments, leading with his head in tackles. I think it was at Corbin Sims he broke the jaw of and almost destroyed someone else. I think it was McCulloch. So there's sort of that wild streak in him with the red hair. So hopefully he doesn't implode on Sunday. But a very good player, when he keeps his cool.
If you were the coach of the respective teams and you had to pick a weakness in the other, I'm struggling to see when I look at the Melbourne pack, Bromwich, Smith, Glasby, Kafusi, Stimson and Finucane. I can't see a weakness there. But is there some part of the opposition that you would be looking to hit if you were giving that final speech going out there? You're either Trent Robinson.
Yeah, there's not really any weaknesses. I mean, you could potentially say maybe Brodie Croft gets a lot of, obviously a very young player. He gets a lot of big forwards running at him. Maybe a few late shots maybe to try and unsettle him. But I mean, he's showed his class in the semi-final, and particularly against South Sydney. It's not. I can't really see many weak links in either team. They're both are very, very experienced. You've got Origin players, Test players, World Cup experience. Over 100 NRL games, so very evenly matched.
If you were Craig Bellamy, would you try and play on potential indiscipline maybe in the Roosters? You've got Jared Wareya-Hargreaves, who can be a penalty machine. You've got Jake Friend, who probably is the kind of good that could unsettle Cameron Smith, but is almost on the edge of discipline sometimes. Yeah. Would you be looking to unsettle the Roosters?
Yeah, definitely. And obviously Cameron Smith, no one plays the referees better than he does. So there's definitely an angle there. I think one of the other interesting things, and whether it probably won't come up in the match, but the rumoured rift between Cooper Cronk and Cameron Smith that broke earlier in the year. He didn't attend Cooper's wedding. So
heinous offence.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's a fantastic storyline that Cooper playing against his old team. He might be the one to sink the Storm. Bad blood or not, whether that's beat up, who knows? But it makes for good fodder.
So we're all getting up Sunday morning, desperate to see this game unfold. Very quick word: we've got the Women's Grand Final, first time ever in the NRL. Brisbane against the Roosters. They've done that really well, I think, this year. Had a very small, tight series between 4 teams. Obviously, I don't know if we'll get to see that over here on Sky, but certainly it's on the NRL app if you want to watch it. Any thoughts on who might win that? I think Broncos just finished at the top of the table. Seemed a really tight unit, but again, fabulous spectacle.
Yeah, I think they're probably too close to call. I haven't seen a lot of the women's NRL. I've seen a lot of the Gillaroos. And it's a fantastic spectacle. I mean, they hit that hard. It's kind of a bit of a throwback in the way they play. There's less wrestle, just really easy on the eye. So it is great to have them playing, and the women's game just goes from strength to strength, both here and in Australia.
And then after that, we get that hors d'oeuvre, we get the main course. We've already said we're expecting it probably to be tight, that there's very little between the teams in terms of the personnel. If Cronk plays, he really has to be fit to have an impact. You can't take a passenger into the grand final. Weighing all of that up, the fact that Melbourne are on the verge of a bit of history, the Roosters have had a resurgence under Trent Robinson. They look like the team of the future. Who's going to win?
I think you just can't go past the Storm. They're so clinical, they're so efficient. They just manage to win the big games, and they have so much big game experience. Craig Bellamy just knows how to get everything out of every player knows what job to do and how to do it, and they fill their roles perfectly. So I think with Billy Slater retiring, that just I think just them at a time. But as you said, I think last year the Cowboys kind of creaked into, no one expected them to make it, and they kind of got their bum whacked a little bit in the grand final. I can't see that happening to the Roosters on Sunday.
So this is, if you're watching or listening to this before Sunday, go and put your money on Melbourne Storm.
No, not based on my word.
If you're listening to it after the game's finished and the Roosters have won, I'll pick them. But either way, enjoy the game. We've really enjoyed the NRL this year. We think we're going to get a fitting final. Thanks for tuning in. Don't miss the game. Go the Storm and all the Roosters.
Thank you.